Imagine waking up every single morning with nothing around you except water, endless water in every direction as far as your eyes can see. No land, no ships, no other human beings, just the ocean stretching out forever under a sky that offers you no comfort and no answers, and knowing that today might be the day you finally run out of the will to keep going, and yet somehow impossibly. One man did this not for a week, not for a month, but for 439 days straight, setting a world record that nobody on Earth has ever come close to breaking, and a record that honestly nobody would ever want to try. His name was Jose Salvador Alvarenga, a 36-year-old fisherman from a small village called Costa Azul in Mexico. And on November 17, 2012, he set out on what was supposed to be a routine fishing trip that would last no more than 30 hours, just him and his young partner heading out into the Pacific Ocean on a small 7-foot boat with a single engine and a single cooler, planning to catch some fish and come straight back home, before anyone even had time to miss them. The Pacific Ocean is the largest body of water on the face of this planet, covering around 165 million square kilometers, which means it is larger than all of the land on Earth combined. And when you are out there on a 7-foot boat, you are not just small, you are invisible. You are a speck of nothing floating on an endless dark surface that does not care whether you live or die, and Jose was about to find out exactly what that feels like in the most brutal way possible. They were about 120 kilometers off the Mexican coast, casting their nets into the water when a violent storm appeared on the horizon and began moving toward them with terrifying speed. And Jose made the decision immediately to abandon the nets and run the engine at full power, trying to utrachi the storm back to shore. And for 6 long hours they pushed that little boat as hard as it would go, with the coastline actually visible in the distance, close enough to see their village, close enough to feel like they were going to make it, and then the engine died. Just like that, without warning, in the worst possible moment, the engine simply stopped working and left them completely powerless on a small boat with a massive storm closing in behind them and a shoreline they could see but could not reach. And before they could even process what was happening, the winds picked up so violently that the boat began moving away from the coast on its own, pushed backward by forces that no 2 men on a 7-foot boat could possibly fight against. They had a radio, and they managed to send their location to their boss before the battery died as well, and their boss did send out a search party. But within just 5 days, the ocean had carried their boat over 450 kilometers away from where they started, and finding a 7-foot boat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean is not a search operation. It is looking for a needle in the largest haystack that has ever existed on this earth. With no nets, no flare gun, no way to signal anyone, and food that ran out after just 2 days, Jose and his partner faced a choice that no human being should ever have to make, which was figure out how to survive on absolutely nothing in the middle of the world's biggest ocean, or simply give up and die, and somehow these 2 men chose to fight. They started catching birds that landed on their boat with their bare hands and eating them raw, storing rainwater in plastic bottles to drink because salt water would have killed them faster than starvation, and when the rain did not come, they drank the blood of fish and turtles when they were lucky enough to catch them, doing whatever it took every single day to stay alive for one more sunrise. But the mental torture of being trapped on a 7-foot boat in the middle of the Pacific Ocean with no end in sight and no way of knowing if rescue would ever come was something that pushed both men to the absolute edge of what human psychology can handle, and after 4 months of this living in nightmare, Jose's partner could no longer take it, and he took his own life, leaving Jose completely alone on that tiny boat surrounded by nothing but ocean in every direction. Try to imagine what that moment felt like, losing your only companion in the most isolated place on Earth, with no one to talk to, no one to help you catch food, no one to keep you company through. Ugh, the long, terrifying nights, just you and the ocean and the silence, and Jose later said that after losing his partner, he saw absolutely no reason to keep living. The hope had been crushed out of him completely, but somehow he kept going, day after day, week after week, month after month, surviving on raw fish and bird blood and rainwater, talking to himself to stay sane. Watching cargo ships pass in the distance too far away to see him, once even waving desperately at a ship that came closer than any other, only to watch it sail past without ever noticing the tiny figure screaming and waving from a 7-foot boat in the middle of the ocean. By the time 11 months had passed, Jose had drifted over 8,000 kilometers from where he started. His clothes had completely rotted away, his body was barely functioning, and he had nothing left to wear except a single undergarment to protect himself from the sun that beat down on him every single day with merciless intensity. And then on January 30th, 2014, 439 days after he first left the Mizicon coast, Jose noticed coconuts floating in the water around him and birds circling overhead, and after more than a year of nothing but empty ocean, he understood what those signs meant, and on the horizon he could see the faint outline of land. It took him half a day to reach that island, and when his boat finally got close enough, he jumped into the water and swam the rest of the way, collapsing onto solid ground for the first time in over a year. And when a local man came out of a nearby house and Jose saw another living human being after 439 days of complete isolation, he broke down completely and wept. The island was Ebenatal, the southernmost point of the Marshall Islands and one of the most remote, inhabited places on Earth, and the fact that the winds and currents had carried Jose's little boat to this specific tiny island out of the entire vast Pacific Ocean is something that defies any rational explanation, because if the winds had shifted even slightly in any direction, he would have missed it entirely and drifted another 5,000 kilometers toward the Philippines with almost no chance of survival. When local police arrived and Jose told them his story, nobody believed him at first, because the idea that any human being could survive for 10 months on a 7-foot boat in the Pacific Ocean eating raw birds and drinking turtle blood sounded him more like a fantasy than a real account. But when his old boss confirmed that yes, Jose had gone out fishing and disappeared a year ago, the story began to check out. Because Jose had drifted into the Marshall Islands without a visa, he was held for a few days of legal processing before being returned to Mexico, and when he got home, the family of his partner, who had died at sea, filed a lawsuit against him, accusing him of having killed and eaten his companion, a charge that was eventually dismissed after investigation, but added one final cruel twist to an already almost unbearably difficult story. Jose Alvarenga later wrote a book called For 38 Days in which he documented his entire journey in detail, and it became one of the most remarkable survival stories ever published. Not just because of the physical endurance involved, but because of what it reveals about the absolute limits of human willpower and the strange, unpredictable ways that fate can keep a person alive when every logical calculation says they should already be dead. His record of 439 days surviving alone at sea remains unbroken to this day, and it is the kind of record that the world is in no hurry to see anyone attempt to challenge.